It is pathetic. Isn't it giving 3 years of your life to someone who never planned to stay? That was my reality, and the bitter taste of it clung to me like smoke on clothes after a fire. I thought love was supposed to feel safe, grounding, maybe even eternal. But with Marcus, it had been a war I convinced myself was worth fighting. The little lies, the broken promises, the nights he came home smelling like someone else's cologne, I swallowed it all. Because I was too afraid of being alone. Because I believed if I loved him harder, he'd finally love me honestly. 3 years. 3 wasted years. And then, in one brutal night, the lie collapsed. It wasn't even dramatic the way I had imagined heartbreak to be. There were no shouts echoing in the night, no slamming doors. Just Marcus's flat voice, sharp with boredom, as he said, "I never asked you to stay. You made it all up in your head." I remember standing there in our apartment in Chicago, the smell of stale takeout on the counter, the city's neon light cutting across the blinds, and realizing I had become a ghost in my own life. That night, I left with nothing but a duffel bag. My hands were trembling when I turned the doorknob for the last time, and for the first time in years, I had no plan, no one waiting for me. Except fate or maybe luck through me, Caleb. I hadn't seen Caleb in years. Back in high school, he was just the guy with an easy laugh who played baseball and somehow managed to be kind without ever looking weak. He wasn't flashy, not the kind of boy who made your heart race across the cafeteria. But he had this steadiness, like the kind of river that carves through stone quietly, over time. When I crashed emotionally, financially, existentially, it was Caleb who caught me. Not because I asked, but because he noticed. He saw me at the gas station the morning after I left Marcus, my duffel bag at my feet, my face pale from too many sleepless nights. I tried to act fine, muttered something about visiting family. But Caleb had always been good at catching lies. He simply said, "You look like hell, Ethan. Come stay at my place until you figure things out." And just like that, without questions, he gave me a lifeline. Caleb lived in a modest house on the edge of a small town in Indiana. A porch swing creaked in the wind, the air smelled like freshly cut grass, and the silence at night was so complete it felt like a different world from Chicago. At first, I told myself it was temporary, just until I found a new job, saved up, and maybe moved to New York or Los Angeles, anywhere far from the ghost of Marcus. But Caleb made leaving complicated. He didn't press me for explanations. He didn't pity me. He just let me exist. He brewed coffee every morning, always leaving a mug for me, even when I didn't join him until noon. He asked if I wanted to join him on runs, and when I said no, he simply shrugged and smiled. But the invitations never stopped. He noticed when I couldn't sleep and left the porch light on for me, so I wouldn't feel alone wandering outside at midnight. The kindness burned more than Marcus's cruelty ever had. Because with Marcus, at least I had built up armor. With Caleb, my defenses kept cracking. One night, about a month after I had moved in, we sat on his porch. The summer heat was heavy, the air buzzing with cicadas. I sipped a beer he handed me, and when our fingers brushed, my chest tightened in a way that scared me. "You ever regret things?" I asked, staring at the dark outline of cornfields. "Regret?" Caleb's voice was low, steady. "All the time. But I try not to let regret decide who I am." I laughed bitterly. 3 years with someone who lied every day, and I stayed. I think regret owns me. Caleb turned his head then, his eyes catching the faint porch light. There was no judgment in them, only quiet understanding. "Maybe it's not about why you stayed. Maybe it's about what you'll do now that you're free." Free. The word landed in my chest like a challenge. I didn't notice when the shift happened, when Caleb stopped being just a friend from high school who offered me shelter, and started being the gravity pulling me back to life. Maybe it was the way he laughed with his whole body, or the way he remembered how I used to drink my coffee black in the mornings before Marcus convinced me otherwise. Maybe it was how, unlike Marcus, Caleb never made me feel like I had to shrink myself to be loved. But I did notice the night I almost kissed him. We had gone into town for groceries. On the way back, his old truck broke down by the side of the road. We ended up walking the last mile in the humid dark, fireflies sparking around us like tiny lanterns. I don't remember what we were laughing about, only that the sound of it loosened something inside me. When we finally stopped to catch our breath, I turned and he was looking at me. Not just looking, seeing. For a moment, the world went quiet. My heart leapt into my throat, and before I could stop myself, I leaned closer. Our faces were inches apart, breath mingling, the air thick with possibility. But I pulled back, because how could a broken, used, a mess of scars, how could I let myself want someone like him? I told myself it was a mistake, that I imagined it, that Caleb couldn't possibly want me that way. But the next morning, when I found a note on the counter scrawled in his messy handwriting, "Didn't want to wake you. Coffee's ready. Hope you slept better." I felt a hope I hadn't dared feel in years. And hope is dangerous. That's when Marcus called, and the past I thought I'd escaped came roaring back. Marcus's voice was the poison I thought I'd purged. Yet hearing it again over the phone, dripping with fake regret, sent my stomach plummeting. "Ethan," he said, as if my name were still his to use. "I made a mistake. I want you back. I should have hung up. But 3 years of conditioning held me hostage in that moment." My heart raced, my hands trembled, and before I realized, I whispered, "Why now?" His answer was cruel in its simplicity. "Because you belong with me. You always did. Belong." The word cracked like a whip, and the old ache, the hunger for validation, flared to life before I could choke it down. But then, I felt another presence. Caleb had stepped into the kitchen, his expression unreadable, his body still. His eyes met mine, steady and piercing. He didn't need to ask who was on the other end. He knew. I hung up, not because I was strong, but because Caleb was standing there, and I didn't want him to see me crumble. That night, sleep was impossible. I sat on the porch with the cicadas buzzing and my chest tight with confusion. Caleb joined me, wordless at first, his knee brushing mine as he settled into the swing. Finally, he said, "You don't owe him anything, Ethan." I flinched. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is." His tone wasn't harsh, but it was firm. "He broke you, and you're still letting him own pieces of you. You deserve more than that. You deserve someone who doesn't make you question if you're enough." I wanted to argue, but my throat closed. My chest burned, and before I could stop it, tears spilled down my face. Caleb didn't move closer, didn't try to fix me with platitudes. He just sat there, the warmth of his presence wrapping around me like a blanket. When I finally looked up, he was watching Menet with pity, but with something deeper, steadier. "Caleb?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "I don't know how to let go." His reply was quiet but resolute. "Then let me help you." The next day, Marcus showed up. I should have expected it, but seeing him leaning against his sleek black car at the end of Caleb's driveway was like being hit with a ghost made of flesh. He looked the same expensive clothes, careless smirk, the kind of charm that could fool anyone who hadn't lived in its shadow. "Ethan," he said smoothly, as if no time had passed, "we need to talk." My stomach nodded, but before I could answer, Caleb stepped onto the porch beside me. He didn't say a word, didn't touch me, but the solid line of his shoulder next to mine gave me strength. Marcus's eyes flicked to him, narrowing. "So this is where you ran to? Small-town comfort? Really, Ethan?" He chuckled, low and cruel. "You think this guy's going to give you what I did?" Caleb spoke before I could, his voice calm but sharp. "I don't know what you gave him, but I know what you took." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Marcus's smirk faltered for the first time. I looked at him, then really looked. And for the first time in 3 years, I saw him not as the man I loved, but as the cage I'd finally escaped. "I don't belong to you," I said, my voice shaking but real. "Not anymore." And when I turned back toward the house, toward Caleb, I knew I had chosen freedom. Healing wasn't instant. The ghosts didn't vanish overnight. But Caleb never asked me to be fixed. He only asked me to be real. Some nights I still woke up with Marcus's words echoing in my head, sweat soaking my shirt. Caleb would find me on the porch, staring at nothing. He never pried. Sometimes he'd hand me a blanket. Sometimes he'd sit beside me in silence. And sometimes, when the weight was unbearable, he'd simply rest his hand over mine until I could breathe again. It was in those quiet moments that I realized what love was supposed to feel like. Not a battlefield, not a transaction, but a refuge. The night I finally let myself choose him, the air was thick with the scent of rain. We'd cooked dinner together, Caleb chopping vegetables while I stirred the sauce, our shoulders brushing in the narrow kitchen. It felt absurdly domestic, and the thought made me both ache and hope in equal measure. Afterward, as thunder rolled in the distance, we lingered by the sink, too close, too hesitant. The storm outside seemed to mirror the storm inside me. "Caleb," I said, my voice trembling, "why are you doing this? Why me?" He set down the dish towel and turned to face me fully. His eyes, those steady hazel eyes, met mine with a clarity that stole my breath. "Because you're worth it. Because you've always been worth it." And then, before doubt could claw its way back, he leaned in. The kiss wasn't desperate, wasn't hurried. It was gentle, grounding, a promise more than a plea. My chest ached as if something broken inside me was being stitched back together with every brush of his lips. I melted, not because I was weak, but because for the first time in years I felt safe enough to. When we finally pulled apart, foreheads touching, I whispered, "I'm scared." Caleb smiled, soft and certain. "So am I. But maybe we can be scared together." Months later, as autumn painted the town in gold and crimson, I stood on that same porch where I once cried over Marcus. This time, Caleb was beside me, his arm around my shoulders, our laughter spilling into the cool evening air. The ghosts were still there, but they no longer ruled me. 3 years of dishonesty had nearly broken me. But one man's quiet steadiness, his stubborn belief that I deserved better, had given me something Marcus never could: truth. And truth, I realized, was where love finally began. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.